she is the Republican Hispanic Assembly Chair. Sandy holds degrees in both ministry and business management. I could only accomplish one of those. Y'all can pretty much figure out which one that is. She has felt driven to improve education and ran for school board in 2022. She is an advocate at the Carolina Pregnancy Center, where she translates materials into Spanish and leads a youth mentorship program as an executive director in Greenville. She is active in the local and state GOP and the Hispanic Assembly. She promotes conservative values and engages the Hispanic community to expand the Republican base in North Carolina. Ladies and gentlemen, Sandy Moyer.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me, April. I really appreciate it. I brought my handy dandy notebook because I get to trail off sometimes. As a mom, you know how that goes. So I have to make sure I stay on target. My name is Sandy Moyer. I am the chairwoman of the Republican National Hispanic Assembly. I know it's a very long name. RNHA, for those who might have difficulty with it. My husband is here with me today, and so is my 4-year-old, and he goes with me basically everywhere. I appreciate his support. I would not be able to do this without his full support. I have 2 other children, a 20-year-old and a 19-year-old, and I homeschooled them for about 10 plus years. So I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And at 8 years old, my mother moved us to the Dominican Republic. My mother was Dominican. She came to this country legally. It was my grandfather who came first, and then he requested her on a visa. She ended up having a permanent residency. But at 8, we moved to the Dominican Republic. We lived there for 10 years. I love the country, beautiful island. Anybody ever traveled to the Dominican Republic? It's gorgeous, okay? And the people are just amazing people. But when I was growing up, it was a very poor country, and still there are areas of the island that are very poor. And so I remember being able to contrast the differences between America and Dominican Republic. And I always knew that I would come back home, okay? I would even have arguments with my history teacher, which she would tell me, no. I was like, no, I'm an American. I knew where I came from, even though I appreciated my Spanish ancestry. I was very proud of my American heritage as well. At 15, both my parents had passed away, and I knew at 18 I would come back to America. When I came back to America, the country was just extremely generous. It's extremely generous to orphans. We don't have that in third world countries, okay? And so I was taken aback by how generous this country was. I ended up going to college in Pennsylvania, met my husband there, we ended up getting married. And I remember when I decided to homeschool, I thought, oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but we did it. I always knew the privileges of being an American, and most Latinos know. They know that this is an incredible country, that we are fortunate to be here. What I didn't understand were the responsibilities that entailed those privileges. And I didn't understand that until I started learning American history. And I was teaching my children, and I thought, wow, we have to maintain this. Because in Dominican Republic, it doesn't matter. Dominican Republic, you couldn't get involved in the government. It's whoever's connected to the government remains connected to the government. There's no scaling. There's no climbing up. So in 2020 when Trump lost, I was very devastated, and I decided to get involved in politics. I was just an American, just a regular American citizen, just a mom who got tired of the status quo, tired of complaining, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna run for school board. I ran for school board. I knew the challenges, and a very respected leader told me, you have 2 challenges. 1, you've never had your kids in public school. 2, you're a Latina. And those things did influence my race, by the way. I only lost by 400 votes, mind you. I was running against somebody who was a native of the area. I had just moved there 6 years ago, so obviously, she had a little bit more connections, ties to ECU, but even with all of her connections, even with the races being nonpartisan, I still only lost by 400 votes. So here's the thing that I would come across when I would knock on doors. Democrats thought I was a Democrat, Republicans thought I was a Democrat. And so when I would knock on the door and I would tell the Democrats my platform, I would get a lot of vitriolic hatred. When I would tell the Republicans my platform, it was a very different response, okay? So I realized, okay, there is some merit to the stereotypes when it comes to Latinos being confused for Democrats instead of Republicans. So how do we rectify that? Okay, so that's a little bit about me. We'll go back to that in a little bit. The RNHA, we'll talk about them a little bit. The RNHA is a national organization. They're nationwide. They have chapters all over the country. There's a chapter here in North Carolina, which I'm chairwoman of. The RDHA started in the 1960s. They were at one point connected to the RNC. It was a group of Latino men who wanted to get involved in the political process, and so nobody would platform them. They raised over $400,000, and the Republican Party said, you guys, we'll platform you. And they decided to work for the Republican Party under the Nixon administration. And so here we are still many years later, still trying to plow the field. I got involved last year. Eduardo was a chairman. If you've heard of Eduardo, he's excellent. His reputation precedes him, just a worker. I had been with the RJ for quite some time as secretary. He asked me in June, hey, I'm busy with so many things. I'm tapping you for interim chair. And I thought, oh boy, I don't know if we're gonna do this. But we started out with 2 chapters. We are now currently with 7 chapters. And hopefully, we will have one in Wake soon. I thank Sandy and Donna, who are just amazing people. You know, their work ethic precedes them as well. And so they're willing to work with us, and they understand the value of coalitions and affiliate groups, and so we're very thankful for that. I'm going to title this A Tale of Two States. Okay, that's how so I was looking at North Carolina, and obviously the goal for us at the Republican National Hispanic Assembly here in North Carolina is for North Carolina to look like Florida, right? Wouldn't that be great? The Democrats have stopped investing money in Florida because they know it's a waste of time. Okay, but how did that happen? So I did a little bit of research. Okay, how is Florida, which is 28% of the population in Florida is Hispanic, the second largest demographic in that state, okay? We have Gil here. Gil, are you Cuban or Puerto Rican? Cuban.
Puerto Rican.
So he knows the majority of, obviously, the demographic is Cuban, okay? In Miami, Dade, all of those. We have family members out there. How did the Republican Party engage the Cuban American community to keep that state, right? Because that's what they did. So I was looking at it, okay, so the first generation Cubans, there was some issues with the Bay of Pigs. They had a little bit of resentment towards JFK not getting involved, and so they said, I will never vote Democrat again. We all know why that happened, right? But that is why some of them, but that is not enough. That wasn't enough. That can't be enough to keep that demographic engaged. We could say that at some point the Republicans had harsher sanctions on Cuba, and that might have been one of the reasons. It could be that just Cubans are just, their values align with the Republican Party, and that's a lot of it, by the way, and they just came here, and those are the values that they saw in the platform. But it also happened because the Republican Party went to work in Florida. The Republican Party in the 80s understood that they could not alienate the Cuban American community and win the presidency and win the state. And so they understood that that demographic had to be targeted. And so I look at our state, okay, it looks a little bit different. So again, remember 20% is Cuban. It's more than 20% Hispanic, but 20% is Cuban, so that's what I meant to say. And then you have the 4th largest demographic of Hispanics is Mexican. Here in North Carolina, the largest demographic of Latinos is Mexican, it's 54%. Messaging is going to be a little bit different, okay? And so I look at Florida and I look at North Carolina, I think we can do the same thing here, but the commonality is going to be the Republican Party is going to have to go to work to target that community. Right now we're at 1.1 million in the state. By 2050, it'll almost double that number, and we'd like to have a lot of babies. And so 60% of the Hispanics are US born, 40% are not. But please do not discard that 40%, okay? Just because some of them, and I'm gonna say something controversial, just because some of them are not here legally, their children are citizens. And so there is a way to message to that generation so you get their children to actually come out. Hispanics are very loyal, we're very family oriented. And those children love their parents. And so depending on how we message, we're gonna either win or alienate that generation. And I have to say, I am against illegal immigration, obviously. Most Hispanics that I know that love this country are for the law being followed. But the immigration issue is a very nuanced issue, and I believe sometimes we just boil it down to one thing. And I think that when we message, if we really look at it as a whole, we're gonna be able to get that demographic in, and I'm gonna talk to you about that in a little bit. So what did the Republicans do to win the Cuban American demographic in Florida? First of all, they were willing to promote Cuban American candidates. Then by the way, this is research that came from a Democrat, okay? The Democrats were actually looking at how did the Republican Party win ground in Florida, because they realized they're in trouble and we need to get Florida back. So this is coming from him. He said, you know what we did as a party, the Democrat Party? We alienated the Cuban American community. We had an exclusionary domestic agenda, meaning only English was promoted on their provisions. We'll talk about that in a second. The Republicans highlighted Cuban American contributions and achievements. Okay? Republicans took a hard stand on socialism and communism. They took a hard stance against it. Republicans played the long game since the 1980s up until now. They knew it was going to take some time, and they built on that. It was actually during Jeb Bush was actually the chair during that time. Republicans recognized, obviously, like I said before, that they couldn't win it without that vote. So, the Cuban American community is super important, super vital in Florida. Here in North Carolina, eventually, we are now the third largest demographic, and that might change in a couple of years. And so how do we engage that community? Can we retain our values and yet still message in a way that is appropriate? Absolutely. We can still say that we are for the law being followed, but also communicate that message in a way that that demographic can understand. I had a lady in my house who was an illegal immigrant, okay? She came over, she was upset about what's going on, and the first thing she said when she came to my home, she's like, oh, those policies that Trump's implementing, this is just ridiculous. I said to her, I asked her, I said, how long have you been in the country? She said, 21 years. I said, 21 years. It never occurred to you to get your papers in order? And she said, well, I never thought it would come to this, I guess. Now all of a sudden we're shifting the focus from blaming Trump to personal agency and responsibility. And so I said to her, okay, so I said to her, we can't, obviously there is a chance that you might get deported, okay, we gotta be realistic, but I can point you in the right direction where you can get help, okay, so you need to get some immigration lawyers, I can push, she did, and she went and she's trying to resolve her issues. When we have conversations one-on-one with folks, most Latinos, you'll find out, are humble enough to accept that, yes, this is right, this is not right. And when you have those conversations in that way, you're able to connect. Also, when we say to them, I'm against illegal immigration because from a humanitarian standpoint, I value your human dignity. And I am against, by the way, the NGOs who have not been highlighted in the media as much as they should. Okay, they made a killing, 380 million, some of them off of trafficking some of these folks, okay? So they didn't come here without guidance and help. Those people were going to their countries, providing them flyers, explain to them the routes and what to say at the border, okay? So this was by design. So right now, if you only focus on the illegal immigrants, you're gonna miss the fact that these other folks, the invisible hand back here, they were the players, they were the major players. These are the people that we need to focus on. Why are there so many Hispanics maybe that are illegal here in North Carolina? We're an act state. A lot of those folks are brought in on workers' visas, okay? A lot of those people are exploited, right? They're paid slave wages. The excuse is Americans are not willing to work for those wages. Those are excuses, okay? A lot of those employers could actually help them with their work visas, they could sponsor them, but it's not convenient. There's a whole conversation we can have about why we are against illegal immigration. We're against people profiting off human capital. We're against the trafficking of minors. Okay, we're against you being exploited. We are not trying to import slave labor into our country because we value you. So we need you to go back and do it the right way. These are ways to communicate with the Hispanic community. Again, I know I have 3 minutes left and I talked a lot. I think the Republican Party has an exceptional opportunity to make a difference in our state. We just have to get busy about going out there, getting into the community, going to the Latino festivals. We have a booth with Johnson County, getting into the communities. I know Gil does some of that, getting plugged in with some of the nonprofits, starting these chapters, which we're doing now as well, donating to our organization. Okay, you can donate to our organization, www.rnhanc.org. 5, 10, whatever you can give. We need money to be able to support these chapters. Like I said, we have 7 chapters right now. Guilford, Meck, Johnstown, some of the most populous, the counties that have the most Hispanics in. We walk with candidates, we translate their materials, and we help however we can because our goal is to get conservatives in office, okay? And our goal is, as Latinos, we want to preserve what America is, because guess what? We know what our countries, we know where we came from. We know what America is. We see the differences between those two. And so we will do whatever we can do to make sure that it doesn't turn into what we left, okay? It aligns with my Christian worldview. It aligns with it's common sense, guys. Education-wise, let's talk about education. All of those things are super important to the Latino community. If we can work together, we can play the long game, we can turn North Carolina red. So I appreciate you guys giving me this opportunity to talk, and thank you again, April, handing that over to it.